Hello my friends, this is Mrs. Coolis. Today we are starting a new chapter. It's chapter 11, Customary Measurement. The essential question says, why do we convert measurements? So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. This chapter starts on page 685. And if you turn to page 687, you'll find this, I am ready. So why don't you go ahead and try this on your own now. Pause the video, try it on your own, and then we'll go over the questions. Okay, let's see how you did. Okay, it says circle the longer figure. So you could see that obviously figure A is longer than figure B. For number 2, you can see that figure B is longer than figure A. Okay, multiply. 9 times 2 is 18. Put down the 8, carry the 1. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 1 more is 10. So the answer to number 3 should be 108. Number 4, 5 times 6 is 30. Put down the 0, carry the 3. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 more is 8. So the answer to number 4 should be 80. Number 5, 5 times 5 is 25. You put down the 5, carry the 2. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 more is 12. Put down the 2, carry the 1. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 1 more is 11. So the answer for number 5 is 1,125. Now you might hear that music in the background. That would be a Star Wars movie that my family is watching because we are huge Star Wars fans. And of course, I'm recording this on Sunday night. Tomorrow is May the 4th, which is a big day for Star Wars fans, right? So I apologize if you could hear that. It keeps getting louder and softer. And the door is closed. So, and I did ask them to turn it down. Anyway, okay, now adding fractions, right? In order to add fractions, you have to have common denominators. So this number 6, they both have 10 in the denominator. So you just go across with the numerator. 2 plus 5 is 7 or 10. Now the directions say to write in simplest form. 7/10 is in simplest form because the only common factor they have is 1. Okay, that's how you determine simplest form, right? Okay, so number 7, again, they have like denominators, the 4, so you just 1 plus 1 is 2 at the numerators over the denominator 4. So 2/4 can be simplified. I could divide each one by 2. The greatest common factor here is 2, so divide each one by 2. And in simplest form, this fraction is 1/2. 1/6 plus 3/6. Again, like denominators, so you just add the numerators. That's 4/6. Okay, now this can also be simplified. The greatest common factor between 4 and 6 is 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. 2/3 is simplest form because the greatest common factor between these two numbers, 2 and 3, is 1. Okay, now hopefully you remember about telling time, and you can see that the hour hand is in red and the minute hand is in blue. And if you remember, the way you read a clock is each of the hours is by the number, and it stays that hour until you get to the complete 60 minutes, right, in an hour. And each of these numbers represents 5. So it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60 minutes in an hour. So this one with the minute hand at the 12 and the hour hand at the 3 is 3 o'clock. And this is how you write it. Okay. So number 10, the hour hand is between 4 and 5, so it's still 4. And the minute hand on the 3, you figure that out by doing 5, 10, 15. So the time here is 4:15. Okay, now number 11, you can see that the hour hand is between 5 and 6, so it's 5 o'clock. And the minutes, again, it's count by 5s, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. So the time here is 5:45. Okay, so we are starting to do measurements, and these are customary measurements as opposed to metric measurements. Excuse me, have a little sip of water. So I put on Google Classroom a ruler, an inch ruler, because that's what we're going to be using in this chapter is inches. So all you need to do is print this out and cut this out if you don't have a ruler at home. And that's what I did here. And then you line up the 7s and you tape it together like so. Okay, so you're going to need that for this lesson. So if you need to go ahead and do that, go ahead again and pause the video and get that ready. Okay. Okay, the other thing that is going to be really helpful, I think, with this chapter is this my customary conversions. It's a weight, length, and capacity that we are working on in this chapter. So you will find this right after the vocabulary cards in your book at the beginning. Those vocabulary words too, I think are going to be really helpful. So I would rip this out of your book, okay? And before you start cutting and folding, I think it's easier to fill in the numbers. So let me help you do that. Okay, so capacity is where we're going to start. So 1 fluid ounce is the unit here. And to compare that to cups, there are 8 fluid ounces in 1 cup. Okay, 1 cup is equal to 8 fluid ounces. You put it here, 1 cup. Pint, 1 pint is 16 fluid ounces. And 1 pint is 2 cups. Okay, because 8 times 2 is 16. Okay, so 1 quart is 32 fluid ounces, and there is 1 quart in 4 cups, or there's 4 cups really in 1 quart. Sorry, I'm saying that backwards. Okay, and the rest is filled in there for you. Okay, now in terms of weight, 16 ounces is 1 pound. Okay, there are 32,000 ounces in 1 ton. Okay, so this is 1 pound here. So there are 2,000 pounds. LB is the abbreviation for pound. Equals 1 ton. That's what the big T is. 1 ton is 2,000 pounds. And there's the 1 ton. Okay, now if you turn it over, fill in the back side here. Here's weight again. Okay, so 1 pound is 16 ounces. Okay, filling in here, let's see, 2 cups is 1 pint, and 1 quart is 2 pints. There are 4 cups in a quart. There are 2 pints in 1 quart. And there is 1 gallon, those 4 quarts. Okay, 16 cups in a gallon, 8 pints in a gallon, and 4 quarts in a gallon. Okay, looking at measurement. Okay, let's see here. 1 foot is 12 inches. There are 1 yard is 36 inches. Okay, 12 inches is 1 foot. There's 1 yard, 3 feet is 1 yard, and 1 mile is 5,280 feet. Okay, now looking at yards, there are 36 inches in 1 yard. Going across here, 3 feet is 1 yard. Okay, 1 mile is 1,760 yards. Okay, how many feet are in a mile? That's 5,280. Okay, so if you look at the directions at the top here, it tells you to cut this out on the dotted lines here. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, and then cut this dotted line. Okay, and then you need to fold it on these yellow yellow dotted lines. So, and then here again, the yellow dotted lines. Okay, the best folding job here. Fix that. Okay, so put this little book together, and blue is weight. Here's your weight conversions. Green is length. Here's your length conversions, and red is capacity. Here's your capacity conversions. I would hang on to this for the chapter and even for the upcoming quiz once we're done with all the chapter assignments. Okay? All right, so that is that. Okay. Let's take a look at the first lesson. Okay. A little sip of water here, sorry. Okay, if you look at the top here, it says length is the measurement of a line between 2 points. Inch, foot, and yard are units that are part of the customary system of measure for length. Okay, so customary measurement is kind of the first measurement, I think, that was pretty much out there. And then scientists found that it was easier to do conversions with units of 10, and that's when they came up with the metric system. And we use the metric system primarily in science. But in other things, you know, in the grocery store, a lot of times it's customary measurements, you know, it's by the pound or by ounces. So it's good to learn both. Okay, so here's Math in My World, example 1. The actual size of a neon damsel marine fish is shown. Measure how long the fish is to the nearest inch, 1/2 inch, and 1/4 inch. Okay, so those rulers that I gave you to print out are divided into, this one is divided into 1/2 inches, because you can see there's 2 parts for each inch, okay? And this one is actually divided into 1/8, okay? So like this is a 1/4 here. This is 2/4, which would also be 1/2. This is 3/4, right? And then this is 1/8. This would also be 2/8, 3/8. So I hope you can kind of see how that works, okay? So each of these little lines is 1/8. Okay, let's look at this one more time. Let's erase that here so you can see. So this is 1/8, 2/8 or 1/4, 3/8. This is 4/8 or 1/2, right? 5/8, 6/8 or 3/4, 7/8, and then 1/2 inch, okay? So when you're measuring, it's telling us to measure to the nearest 1/2 inch and the nearest 1/4 inch, okay? So this would be like your 1/2 inches. I think it might be easier to see if we use this for the 1/2 inch, and then the 1/4 inch would be these a little bit longer lines here, okay? When you're trying to be as accurate as possible, it's best to measure to like the smallest like lines in between. So like 1/8, if you measure to the nearest 1/8 inch, that would be the most precise measurement, okay? So just keep that in mind. Okay, and here we go, trying to pull up the answers here next to me. Okay, so here's a picture of the neon damselfish, okay? And it says, compare the length to what you know about inches. Record the length in the table. Okay, so here's the table. It says measure to the nearest 1/2 inch. Okay, so I'm going to use this ruler that has the 1/2. Okay, so when you use a ruler, sometimes the 0 starts at the edge, but if you see a line like this with the 0, that means that's where you're going to line it up on the left-hand side. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but sometimes the 0 starts right at the edge, and sometimes it's in a little bit. And these rulers, it's in a little bit, okay? So you're going to line up all the way to the left, okay, with that 0, and then you look across to the end of the length here, so you can see that if I were to measure this to the nearest 1/2 inch, what is it closest to? Okay, let's see. Here we go. Okay, it kind of looks like it's a little bit over this way, right? So, I'm sorry. First, let's do to the nearest inch. I apologize. Okay, so is it closer to the 1 or the 2? It's closer to the 2 here, right? So in your chart here, you're going to fill in 2 inches. Okay. Now, it says using ruler to measure the length to the nearest 1/2 inch. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm ahead of myself here. Okay, so let's try this again. Okay, now to the nearest 1/2 inch. Okay, is it closer to 1.5 or 2? Okay, it's already can't be close to the 1. So this answer for the nearest 1/2 inch is going to be 1 1/2 inch. IN period is the abbreviation for inches. Okay, now it says to measure it to the nearest 1/4 inch. Okay, so I measure up again here with the 0 line. Should be at the edge to the left. Okay, now here's the 1/4 inches, right? Here's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and this would be another whole 2, right? Okay, so what is it closest to? Looks like it's closest to this line here. So that would be 1 2/4 or 1 1/2 inch. Okay, and you fill it in the table. Okay, so it says to measure the length of the fish to the nearest 1/4 inch, record the length in the table. We just did that. So an inch is about the length of one paper clip, one of those smaller paper clips. A foot is about the length of a textbook, and a yard is about the height of a chair. That means up and down. Okay, let's see this side. Okay, so it says, it says to choose the best estimate for the length of the caterpillar. Okay, so if you look here, what makes the most sense? 2 inches, 20 inches, 20 feet, or 2 yards. Okay, so remember, there are 12 inches in a foot, and there are 3 feet in a yard. So we know that what makes the most sense here is the 2 inches. Okay, so that's the answer for example 2. Okay, now it says estimate, then measure each to the nearest inch, 1/2 inch, and 1/4 inch. Okay, so if you were just to look at that, I don't know, how big do you think it would be? I would think it'd be at least like 2 to 3 inches, right? Okay, so let's do first to the nearest inch. And they gave us these nice lines to show us the edges. Okay, so I line up my 0 at the edge here and here. Measuring to the nearest inch first, is it closer to the 2 or the 3? You could say it's over the halfway mark. So if I'm going to do the nearest inch, that would be 3 inches. I'm going to write on the line here. Okay, IN period is the abbreviation for inches. I do a comma. Now it says to measure to the nearest 1/2 inch. Okay, so is it closest to 2.5 or the 3? Well, it's closer to the 2.5, so that would be our measurement to the nearest 1/2 inch. Okay, so 2 1/2 inches, comma, and then I'm going to use this ruler to do the nearest 1/4 inch. Okay, so if I look here, it's kind of halfway, I think. Let's see here, but you can see it's kind of a little bit over. So the book is saying that it is 2 3/4 inches. Okay, there's that one. Okay, now 2, to me this looks like about 2 inches too, I'm not sure. But I'm going to use this ruler that has the 1/2 inches. Okay, so to the nearest inch, is it closer to the 1 or the 2? You can see that it's closer to the 2 inches here. So I'm gonna write that down first. That's the nearest inch. Now, the nearest half inch, what is it closest to? Here, do you think it's closest to 1.5 or the 2? Well, the book is saying that it's 1.5, and I could see that's a little bit closer here. There's 1.5 inch, okay, period, and a comma, and then measuring it to the nearest 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. Yeah, it's kind of in the middle here. Let's see. Line up your 0 with the edge. And the book is saying again that it's a little bit over and that it's 1 3/4 inches. Okay, so you can see how there's some discrepancies a little bit between different rulers. So that's okay, as long as you're really close, you would not get that wrong on your homework or a test, okay? All right, so now it says to estimate, right? So choose the best estimate for the length of a bike. Okay, well, think about your bike, if you have one. And let's see, what do you think would be the closest? Okay, it's definitely bigger than 12 inches is 1 foot, right? I mean, this ruler right here, you can't really see it on my screen, but I mean, that's 12 inches, that's 1 foot. Your bike is bigger than that, right? So I'm 5 feet 4 inches tall. So if I were to lay down next to the bike, it would probably be just a little bit shorter than me. So 12 feet, that would be like, double me plus. Yeah, bikes are not that big, right? So the best estimate here is B. Okay, 4 feet. Okay, now they want you to do some independent practice. Okay, so you can go ahead and pause the video and try this on your own. And then why don't you do to number 7, and then we'll check the answers when you play again. Okay. All right, again now, the directions are, and I should have said this before, to measure each the nearest inch, 1/2 inch, and 1/4 inch. Okay, so for the nearest inch, I'm going to line up my 0 here, and you could see, is it closer to the 1 inch or the 2 inches? And you could see that it's closest to the 2 inches, right, because it's over halfway. So 2 inches, period, and I'm going to do a comma. Now to the nearest 1/2 inch, you could see it's probably closer to the 1.5 here as opposed to the 2. So 1.5 inches. Okay, keep this lined up. I'm going to switch over to my one that has the 1/4 inches. Okay, and this one you could see a lot easier, I think. The answer to this one is 1 3/4. So look at this bigger line here is 1/4, 2/4 is 1/2, and then that's 3/4. So that's really close. So that's the answer here to the nearest 1/4 inch. It's 1 3/4 inches. Okay, let's see about the goldfish. You can use this ruler too, and maybe you're using a ruler from home to see what the closest inches would be, right? Okay, so I just felt like it was a little easier to see it here, but you should be able to see it just from a regular ruler like this as well. So is it closer to the 2 or the 3? We could see that it's closer to the 2 inches. So there's that answer. Now to the nearest 1/2 inch, is it closer to 2 or 2.5? Looks to me like it's just over that 1/4 inch, so it's closer to 2 1/2 inches. Okay, and then to the nearest 1/4 inch, you can see just a little bit over this 2 1/4 inches. 2 1/4 inch is to the nearest 1/4 inch. Okay, let's see about, I think that's a ball. Okay, let's see. Well, is it closer to the 0 or the 1? Nearest inch, I think, would be 1 inch, right? Write that down. Okay, now to the nearest 1/2 inch. Okay, is it closer to, line up to the edge there, the 0. is it closer to the 1 or the 1/2 inch? See, it's closer to the 1. So here's 1 inch, that's to the nearest 1/2 inch. Okay, now we're gonna measure to the nearest 1/4 inch. Okay, so I'm lining up that 0 again with the edge. And here's our 1/4 inches right here. Okay, so you can see that it's really close to this 3/4 inches. Here's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. So it's 3/4 of an inch, okay, to be more precise. Okay, then they want you to measure the bottom of this. I think it's like a pyramid. Okay, measuring to the nearest inch, you can see that's closest to 2 inches. Okay, to the nearest 1/2 inch, you can line up the 0 with the edge. Okay, is it closer to the 1.5 or the 2? Between these, it's closer to the 2 inches here, right? Okay, and closest to measuring to the nearest 1/4 inch, you can line that up. Okay, it seems like it's just a little bit over here. So this we would round it up to 2 inches as well. Whoops, 2 inches. Okay, that would be the closest 1/4 inch here too. Okay, now they say to choose the best estimate. Okay, so the length of a whistle, you think about Mr. V's whistle that he blows in, has for gym class. Okay, what makes more sense? 2 yards, so that would be 3 feet in a yard, that'd be 6 feet, right? That's too big. 2 feet, also too big. The size of a whole ruler, 12 inches, too big, right? So what makes the most sense here is 2 inches. Okay, length of a chalkboard. Okay, you wouldn't be able to write very much on it if it's only 1 foot long. Even 2 of these, right? Even 3 of these would be a yard, right? So what makes the most sense is 3 yards. So that's 3 feet in a yard. So that would be 3 times 2 is 6 feet. So that kind of makes more sense if you think about it, especially our whiteboard at school, right? That's at least 6 feet up front. Okay, you turn it over. Here's our word problems. It says, Patrice found a book that was 2.25 inches thick. She stacked it with another book that was the same thickness. How tall was the stack? Okay, so it would be 2 1/4 plus 2 1/4 equals, right? Because it's the same thickness. Okay, so the easiest way to do this is, you could do it 2 ways. You could change this into improper fractions. So 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 more is 9. 9/4 plus 9/4 again equals 18/4. And then you have to turn it into a mixed number. So really what this is saying is 18 divided by 4. 4 goes into 18 4 times. Minus 16 is, I'm not leaving a lot of room here for figuring. So it'll be 4 2/4. Sorry if you could see this here. Which equals, that's not simplest form, right? It would have to be 4, and the greatest common factor here is 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay, so, and don't forget the units, it would be 4 1/2 inch. Okay, there is another way to do this problem. Get a piece of paper to show you. I think it's a little bit easier. I wrote it across that way and did improper fractions. I think it's kind of easier if you write it up and down. So I'll show you this way. 2 1/4 plus 2 1/4 inch, okay? Because these are like denominators, I can just add 1 plus 1 is 2/4, and then I can add the whole numbers. 2 plus 2 is 4. Again, you have to simplify this. Let's actually see if the book has it simplified. They do. they have it in simplest form. Okay, so 2/4 can be simplified, right? I can divide each part by 2. So it would be 4 and 1/2 inches. I think it's a little bit easier if you write it up and down this way. And then add the fractions first, and then add the whole numbers, okay? Where it gets tricky is if you have a number, this fraction that's bigger than 1, then you have to add that to the whole number. But we won't worry about that right now. Okay, here is, I'll say that for 5th grade. Okay, Helke found a stick that was 5 3/4 feet long. He needed one that was about 5 feet long. Is it reasonable to say that this stick will work? Explain. Well, we could say yes, because, okay, you can't really add to the stick, but you could take away from it, right? You could cut part of it off. So, because the stick is longer than what he needs. Okay, so there's the answer to 11. Okay, model math. Use the greater than and less than signs to put the following units in order from least to greatest. Foot, yard, inch. Okay, so the smallest unit here is going to be an inch, right? Is less than, which one would come next? A foot, which is going to be less than a yard. Because we know it takes 12 inches, right, to make a foot, and 3 feet to make a yard. So we need to explain it that way. There are 12 inches in a foot. So 1 foot is longer than an inch. Okay, and there are 3 feet in a yard. So 1 foot is less than 1 yard. Okay. Now it says find 2 objects in your classroom that are longer than 2 inches and shorter than 4 inches. How did you use estimation in selecting objects? So look around your house, around wherever you are, in your kitchen or your room or your living room, family room, okay, and see what you can find. Like, here's my mouse. I'm gonna say, guess that this is between 2 and 4 inches, and I'm right. So how did I figure that out? Well, they said that an inch is like the size of a paper clip, right? So if you could kind of picture a paper clip, you could see that, oh yeah, this is gonna be longer than 2 and probably less than 4. I don't know if I have anything else around here. I'm in our family office right now. Well, here's a little box. I'm gonna guess that's between 2 and 4. Yes, just a little bit over 2 inches. Okay, so how do you know that it's between 2 and 4 inches? Well, how do you use estimation selecting out? Well, like maybe if we were in the classroom, maybe it would be like a crayon or a glue stick. In my case, I did my mouse and this little box that I found in the drawer. Okay, so it says, so we know, knowing that things between 2 and 4 inches are smaller items. We wouldn't pick something like a textbook, right? So very sloppy writing, sorry about that, like a textbook. Because that would be closer to like a foot, right? We talked about that in the beginning, right? Your binders, your folders, I mean, all those things would be a lot bigger than 4 inches, right? Okay, and last, it says here, number 14, name 2 customary units of length. Give an example of an object and tell which unit is more accurate for measuring that object. So we could say more accurate. So the smaller the unit, the more accurate it's going to be. So inches, and how about say inches and feet. Okay, so we're going to say between inches and feet that inches are more accurate. To measure, let's say, a book, because they are a smaller unit of measure. Okay, so that is a lot going on in this lesson. Do not hesitate to send me an email or put something out on Google Classroom Stream. If you have any questions about this lesson, now you need to do the homework on pages 701 and 702. Use these, rulers that I put the PDF out there for you to copy and print out and cut out and tape together. Again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Okay, thanks guys, take care.